Do you know someone over 80 who sleeps well, climbs stairs, remembers everyone's name, and still gets dressed without having to sit down? That person isn't lucky. Their body is functioning in a way that most people lost decades ago, and they probably have no idea why. I'm going to tell you what is happening inside the bodies of these people, and if you are already in your 70s, 75, 80, drop your age in the comments right now, because depending on where you are in life, what I'm about to share here means something completely different for you. Let's start with what nobody talks about openly, but everyone suffers through in silence: sleep. Just sleep. Without a pill, without drops, without that half dose that turned into a full dose that turned into a double dose over the years. There is a group of people over 80 who lie down, close their eyes, and sleep deeply and wake up rested without having taken anything. That isn't luck. That is biology working the way it was always supposed to work. What happens to most people is different. As the years go by, the circadian rhythm, your body's internal clock, starts to fall out of sync. Melatonin production drops. Cortisol, which should come down at night, stays elevated. The nervous system cannot slow down, and then the cycle begins. You don't sleep, you become anxious about not sleeping. The body goes on alert, and sleeping becomes even harder. But these people over 80 who sleep without medication, what do they have that's different? Most specialists will tell you about sleep hygiene. Turn off screens, dark room, low temperature. That exists and it works, yes. But what they rarely tell you is this: deep natural sleep at that age is directly connected to the level of systemic inflammation in the body. When the body carries a chronic inflammatory state, even without visible pain, even without a diagnosis, the central nervous system cannot enter the deep phases of sleep. These people who sleep well at 80 have, in the vast majority of cases, inflammatory markers that are much lower than average. Not because they took something miraculous, but because throughout their lives, consciously or unconsciously, they made choices that reduced that inflammatory state. Movement, exposure to natural light, a diet with a low inflammatory load, active social relationships, a sense of purpose. It isn't a secret, it's biology, and the good news is that this can be worked on at any age. Tell me in the comments, can you sleep well without depending on anything? Right where you are watching this video from, I want to know where this information is reaching. Second thing, climbing stairs. Sounds simple, right? But it isn't. Climbing stairs demands from your legs both an eccentric and concentric muscular contraction at the same time. It requires your knees to support between 3 and 4 times your body weight with every step. It demands balance, motor coordination, hip strength, and cardiovascular capacity to sustain the effort. When a person over 80 climbs stairs without holding the railing, without stopping halfway, without running out of breath, that represents a set of systems working in an integrated way. And here comes the piece of information that few health professionals mention in their offices. Leg muscle strength is one of the most reliable predictors of functional longevity that science knows today, more than cholesterol, in some studies, even more than blood pressure. There is even a simple test, sitting down and getting up from the floor without using your hands, that can estimate the risk of mortality over the coming years with impressive accuracy. Because what it measures isn't isolated strength, it is the sum of strength, mobility, coordination, and balance. Climbing stairs is the everyday version of that test. Muscle loss begins around age 35, silently. Most people only notice when they have already lost too much, when climbing stairs starts to feel heavy, when getting up from a chair requires pushing off with the arms, when the body starts asking for support where it never needed any before. But this isn't inevitable, it is preventable, and in many cases it is reversible. Muscle is living tissue, it responds to stimulus at any age. There are records in the scientific literature of people over 90 who, with the right stimulus, increased muscle mass and strength within weeks. So when you see someone over 80 climbing stairs with ease, you are not seeing successful aging by chance. You are seeing the result of a musculoskeletal system that was preserved or stimulated over time. The question that remains is, what are you doing today to preserve yours? Third point, And this one hits deep for a lot of people. Remembering people's names, remembering dates, a birthday, a scheduled appointment, the name of the grandchild they just met. You know what is more frightening than forgetting? It's normalizing the forgetting. It's accepting that this is just part of aging and that there is nothing to be done. There is an enormous difference between benign age-related forgetfulness, that moment when something is on the tip of your tongue and then comes back, and progressive cognitive decline that compromises daily functioning. People over 80 who maintain sharp memory for names and dates aren't lucky in the genetic sense you might imagine. There are genetic factors involved, yes, but they explain less than most people think. What neuroscience has been showing over the last 2 decades is that the brain has a capacity for regeneration and adaptation far greater than previously believed. Neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to form new connections, does not stop with age. It slows down, but it does not stop. And what activates neuroplasticity? Novelty, challenge, social connection, physical movement, which increases cerebral blood flow and stimulates the production of BDNF, a protein that acts like fertilizer for neurons. Quality sleep, which is when the brain literally cleans itself, eliminating metabolic waste that accumulates and is associated with neurodegenerative diseases. Do you see how everything connects? The person who sleeps well has a cleaner brain. The person who moves has a better irrigated brain. The person who maintains active social connections keeps the brain in constant processing and stimulation. Memory isn't a gift, it's a consequence. Tell me down in the comments, do you still remember names and dates easily? Or do you feel like that has been slipping away? Write your city in the comments. I want to see where these stories are coming from. Fourth thing, and this is the most revealing of all, getting dressed standing up, putting on shoes standing up, without sitting down, without holding on to anything. On one foot for a few seconds while the other goes into the pants or the shoe. It sounds trivial, but for the systems of your body it is a highly complex task. In that moment, your vestibular system, the balance organ in the inner ear, is processing the position of your head in space. Your eyes are sending visual information to the brain. The receptors in the soles of your feet and in your joints are sending data about pressure and position. And the cerebellum is integrating all of that in real time to keep you standing. When any of those systems fails or starts to decline, balance disappears, and with it, independence disappears too. Falls are the leading cause of hospital admission in people over 65, and a large portion of those falls happen in moments exactly like this one, while getting dressed, while putting on shoes, while getting up in the middle of the night. But balance isn't a fixed trait, it is a skill, and like every skill, it can be trained. The vestibular system responds to challenge. The proprioceptive receptors, located in the muscles, tendons, and joints, become more sensitive with stimulation. The brain learns to integrate information better when it is placed in situations that demand it. People who train balance regularly, even without knowing they are doing so, by walking on uneven terrain, practicing activities that require coordination, or simply having the habit of moving in varied ways, preserve that capacity for decades longer than sedentary people. The 83-year-old who gets dressed standing up isn't displaying a rare ability. They are showing the result of a nervous system that was kept active, challenged, and nourished over time. So we come back to the question from the beginning. Over 80 and still sleeping without medication, climbing stairs, remembering people's names, and getting dressed standing up? That isn't luck. It is the result of decades of choices, often unconscious, that kept the body and the brain functioning in an integrated way. And the real question isn't about who is over 80. The real question is, what are you building today? Because the body you will have at 80 is being decided right now. Not with one big dramatic decision, with the small daily choices, with what you put into your body, with how much you move, with the quality of your sleep, with the connections you maintain, with the challenges you don't run away from. Each of the 4 things I showed you here has a root, and that root begins long before 80. If this video found you, it wasn't by accident. Maybe your body is already sending you signals. Maybe you already noticed that sleep isn't what it used to be. that climbing stairs takes more out of you than before, that someone's name escapes you at the wrong moment, that getting dressed standing up doesn't feel as steady as it once did. Those signals aren't a verdict, they are warnings, and a warning you can still respond to. Now tell me in the comments, which of these four things hit closest to home for you? Also write where you are watching from, city, state. I want to see the map of where this conversation is reaching. Every comment helps me understand who is on the other side of the screen and what you most need to hear. And if you know someone, a mother, father, grandmother, grandfather, friend, who still does all four of these things at over 80, tag that person here. They deserve to know that what they have is rare and worth preserving.